Manhunter, directed by Michael Mann, is the first film to be adapted from a Thomas Harris Hannibal Lecter novel, and it's a taut, eerie noir thriller marred by some distracting stylistic choices. Forensic investigator Will Graham, William Peterson, is on the trail of the Tooth Fairy serial killer, Tom Noonan, and has roughly 3 weeks, until the next full moon, to catch him before the killer strikes again. It's interesting how my perception of Manhunter changed as I watched it. Despite the narrative's ticking clock, Manhunter initially feels somewhat slow and limp, with TV-style acting consisting of notable pauses and a lack of flash. But at about the 16-minute mark, I became aware of how natural and real these elements make the film feel. Manhunter delves deep into the investigative rigor of tracking down the killer, with a tense chain of clues, deductions, and setbacks, and provides an unnerving insight into Graham's psyche. Peterson is restrained yet intense as Graham. He caught the serial killer Hannibal Lecter, Brian Cox, and is adept at thinking like serial killers in order to predict their motives and movements. But Graham reveals that he'd spent time in a psychiatric ward because he couldn't get Lecter's thoughts out of his head, and it's disquieting to watch him obsessively and angrily mirror the thoughts of the Tooth Fairy killer. Some part of him seems to derive a perverse enjoyment from thinking like the killer, and this scares him. As for Lecter, I think I may like Brian Cox's portrayal more than Anthony Hopkins's. Hopkins's portrayal is charismatic, enigmatic, focused, and savage, but feels exaggerated, especially in his somewhat bizarre accent, when compared to Cox's subdued, more human performance. This Lecter doesn't need to belittle and dominate you at every moment. He knows he's the smartest person in the room, and interacts with Graham from a position of calm, weirdly suave smugness. It's curious how Manhunter downplays the cannibalism we know Lecter for from the Hopkins films, merely alluding to it as Graham recounts his backstory, and the Tooth Fairy killer's childhood history of abuse, which is heavily addressed in Red Dragon. This may be a weakness of Manhunter, and a disadvantage it has against Red Dragon and Ray Fiennes' portrayal of the Tooth Fairy killer. On the level of performance, Noonan is both intimidating and strangely dainty as the Tooth Fairy killer / Francis Dollarhide, expressing awkward, real affection for his blind colleague at the photo store. It is possible to explain away all the intrigue out of a creepy character, like with Norman Bates in the epilogue of Psycho, but Dollarhide's lack of a clear backstory makes him feel simplistic compared to his well-developed co-stars. The other aspect of Manhunter I didn't like is its soundtrack. This was a sticking point for many viewers, and for good reasons. The blaring song choices can overwhelm the emotion of some scenes, and the synth score can sometimes sound too upbeat for the tone of an otherwise somber scene. Manhunter is suspenseful, superbly acted, and has great character writing, but some niggling problems bring it down. While I think Manhunter has the better Lecter,
thank you so very much.
Red Dragon has the more engaging Dollarhide, and Silence of the Lambs is the better film. Manhunter earns 3.5 stars out of 5. Thanks for watching. Cheers.
I'm finished.